Hello everyone and welcome to Chefin' with Charlotte. Today we are going to be making some cream puffs. And first I just want to explain a couple things to you. So what we're making, the dough is called pate choux, which I want to make this today because I see a lot of professional chefs and professional cooks messing this up regularly. So the first thing we're going to want to do is get all of our ingredients together. So I have 2 ounces of butter, a half of a cup of milk, 3 ounces of flour, 2 eggs, and then we're going to go ahead and add in a teaspoon of sugar, a pinch of salt, and a pinch of cinnamon. So whenever I go to measure like a pinch of salt, I always put it straight into my hand first. See, I overpoured. So now I can just take this and literally just put a pinch of it right into my flour. And then the rest I don't need. So there's a lot of things that we can do with this dough. So essentially when you do go to cook it, when you bake it in the oven, it hollows out and it puffs up. So you can make cream puffs, you can make eclairs, you can make like cheese puffs, profiteroles. They're all like forms that use pate choux. So if you wanted to make it savory versus sweet, it would just depend on like what additional ingredients you add. But if you wanted to do like a savory cheese version, you could always add in some nutmeg and maybe some chili pepper, and that'll give it a really nice flavor. And you can always sprinkle in some cheese as well into the dough. So our first step here is to put in our milk and our butter into a pot. Now the process of having everything already like put in, everything all weighed out and everything is called mise en place, and that stands for everything in its place. So I went ahead and pre-measured the things that we need for our dough, and so it's easy. So we're gonna go ahead and bring this up to a boil. Make sure you're stirring throughout the process because it will burn because it is milk. This is gonna make a really small batch. If you did want to do something a little larger, going ahead and just like doubling or tripling the recipe is no problem. The importance is to have like the flour ready to go, because as soon as this comes up to a boil, you're gonna want to slowly add in your flour and cook out the raw flour, just like if you were making a roux. So my milk solution is starting to bubble and it's brought up to a boil, so I'm going to turn it down now and I'm going to add in the flour. And it will kind of like bubble up, so you need to like slowly work it in. All we're doing here is just going to keep mixing it until all of the flour is absorbed into the milk, and then we will cook out the raw flour. Now you want to do this on a really low heat because you do not want to burn the flour or the milk. So this is now our milk, our butter, flour, cinnamon, salt, sugar, and the only ingredients we have left is eggs, and we're going to go ahead and add in some vanilla with the eggs as well. So we're just going to keep this on the stove for just a couple minutes until you don't see any more raw flour. Just keep mixing it because you don't want it to just sit and burn, especially with spices in there and everything. Smells good, like Cinnamon Toast Crunch almost. So at this point, it should be like a formed dough. I wish you could smell what I'm smelling. This is delightful. Alright, so we're all set here. I don't see any raw flour, so I'm going to go ahead and pull this off of the stove, and we're going to put it into the mixer and add in our eggs. So I just put my dough into my mixer, and I use the paddle. I just find that it's easier to work with than the whisk or the dough hook for this. And we're going to just start mixing slowly. And then one by one, we are going to add in the eggs. Now, for this portion, you don't want to break up the eggs ahead of time because you really do want to let like one egg fully incorporate before adding the other. And then I'm also going to add in a little bit of vanilla into this mixture as well. Probably about a teaspoon or so, but you can kind of eyeball it. Okay, so now that I've added in both of my eggs, it's important to turn the speed up higher. Let it go for a few minutes, and you're gonna like see the eggs really like incorporate into the dough, and it's gonna become way less liquidy. Kind of what you're looking for. Just make sure that you scrape the bottom because there will be some raw dough that is not fully incorporated, and then just whip it a little bit more, and that's it. So you could always use a piping bag. Otherwise, you could use an ice cream scoop and make little scoops of everything. If you choose to use an ice cream scoop, you're gonna be better off like getting the scoop really warm. So maybe you can keep like a little pot of water so you can dip in between. Otherwise, the pot of choux is just gonna stick to everything. So I have a sheet tray lined with parchment paper. I just put a little water underneath. You could also spray, put a little bit of dough, and it just helps the parchment paper stick to the pan. So I'm gonna go ahead and fill my piping bag and just make little lines. So once your oven is preheated to 400 degrees, you're going to go ahead and put these in for 17 minutes, turn the oven off, and then another 17 minutes, and you want to make sure that they are really dried out inside. Otherwise, they're going to shrink up, and they're not going to be like puffy. It's just going to make them really hard to stuff if you're going to stuff them. While our dough is puffing in the oven, it's important to make our filling through this downtime. So when they're ready to go, we can just go ahead and stuff them and finish them. Okay, so we're going to start our pastry cream. So I have 1 cup of milk and a teaspoon of vanilla in this pot here. And then I have on the side 2 eggs and 1 yolk. And I'm going to put in a 1/4 cup of sugar, but you won't want to do that until the milk has come to a boil. And then I have 1 tablespoon of butter. And yeah, so what I'm going to do is heat up the milk and the vanilla. Bring that up to a boil, and then I'm going to slowly add that into my eggs with the sugar. So the eggs and the sugar are going to go together. You're going to whisk it together, and once the milk comes up to temp, you're going to slowly add in. So what I'm going to do to make sure that my eggs don't move around is I'm going to put a towel underneath, and it's going to keep it from making it move around while I'm whisking. So my milk is just coming up, so I'm going to go ahead and add in my sugar into my eggs. You just want to do that very last minute because otherwise it'll like burn the eggs. And then I'm going to go ahead and add in my milk right into my measuring cup because then I can just slowly pour it in. And then you want to start soaking your dishes right away so it's easier to clean later. Alrighty, so I have my eggs and my milk, so I'm just going to go ahead and slowly add it in. You don't want to go too fast because this is actually cooking your eggs. And then we're actually going to go ahead and put this back on the stove. This is really when the pastry cream is going to start thickening, so it's really important to keep whisking throughout this whole process. So while your pastry cream is cooling down, you're going to just add in your butter. And then you want to make sure you cool it down right away, because it will keep cooking. I'm going to go ahead and just buzz it with an immersion blender, because I have one, and it'll be nice and smooth, just in case there's any chunks. What we're going to do is put a nice layer of plastic wrap directly on top and push it down, so that way you don't get a film on the top. And then you're going to put it on an ice bath to cool it down immediately. Alright, so we have 3 more steps and our eclairs will be done. So, what we're going to do here is you take one of your little pot of choux things and you're going to stick a hole in it. You can do it on the bottom, you can do it on the top, you can do it on the side. I'm going to do it on the end, so that way you can just dip your piping bag right in and it'll go straight through. So go ahead and do that to all of them. And then we'll fill it with the pastry cream. You're going to go ahead and finish that with all of them. I just wanted to add, if you don't have a piping bag, you could always just slice open and use a spoon and pour it right inside. And then I would just stick it in the freezer before you go to dip it into the chocolate. So we need to melt down our chocolate, so there's two ways you can do it. Either put it in the microwave in 30-second increments and just make sure you're stirring every time it comes out, or you can put it on a water bath on the stove and just put it in a bowl on top of the pot. And then just melt it that way, which will melt it better, but you're less likely to burn it in the microwave as long as you keep stirring at it. And that is what we call tempering chocolate. So I have my nice creamy chocolate. I did add some butter in there, and you're gonna want to do that for sure. Almost like 2 chocolate to 1 part butter, just so that you get it nice and creamy. And then we're gonna go ahead and just dip, and then that's it.